Good morning. My name is Virginia Tate, and I am a AP U.S. History teacher from Florence High School. And today we're going to talk about organizing your essay for the AP exam. So we're going to jump right into it so that we don't waste any time. This particular presentation can be applied to both types of essays found on the AP exam, the DBQ and the LEQ. So it's really, really important, let me just start by saying this, to have a well-organized essay, because when you have a well-organized essay, it allows for the reader to be able to find points more efficiently, right? We're working towards achieving a certain amount of points on both essays, and so we want to make sure that it's easy for the reader to find. An organized essay also just gives a really good impression to the reader of what kind of writer you are, and so it's important to make sure that we have that, okay? So we're going to start off and really quickly talk about the introduction paragraph. The introduction paragraph is a super important paragraph because you can get 2 points in this particular paragraph, and it sets the stage for the rest of your essay, right? So when you are talking about an introduction paragraph, the 2 points that we are going to try to grab are both the contextualization point and the thesis point. So what I have done is I've come up with a essay question that we can use to try to talk through this. So you see the question in front of you. Evaluate the extent to which debates over slavery in the period from 1830 to 1860 led to the Civil War. Okay, talking about that, we're going to look at how would we get contextualization. In order to get a contextualization point, you have to fully develop the context of the question. What is going on prior to 1830 that led up to these debates over slavery? Okay, so in this particular instance, you might talk about the debates over slavery that existed prior to 1830, right? The constitutional compromises like the Three-Fifths Compromise, you might talk about the Missouri Compromise, any of those things, right? But the important part about contextualization is making sure that it's well developed. Do not assume that the reader is a history teacher. Go ahead and assume that they know nothing about what the topic that you're writing about so that you are very thorough. Your contextualization needs to be probably 4 to 6 sentences. And if you're having trouble starting it, a good place to start is maybe just prior to 1830. A lot of times my students have a hard time with that. So prior to is an easy way to put pen to paper and begin writing. So the second point in the introduction paragraph, after you've grabbed that contextualization point, is the thesis point. Here's a sample thesis for this question. You want your thesis to be incredibly clear and succinct and lay out the argument for your paper. And I always encourage my students to make it the very last sentence in their introduction paragraph. So here's the example. Although other issues such as tariffs caused tensions between North and South, the debates over slavery was the major cause of Civil War because of divisive sectional interests and the lost ability to compromise. I want to point out 3 things really quickly. Number 1, you notice I have a counter argument here. You don't have to have a counter argument, but it is a good practice to if you can. So for example, I've said tariffs were also another reason there were problems, not just the debate over slavery, okay? Then I also have this qualifying word here. I've said not only was slavery a cause of the Civil War, but it was a major cause. It's important to have that qualifying word so that you know you can tell your reader that you are arguing the fact that the debate over slavery was more important than the tariffs. And then if you notice, I've got 2 very clear categories. I'm going to have one body paragraph that talks about divisive sectional interests, and then I have another one that's going to talk about lost ability to compromise. So let's get into the body paragraphs really quickly after we know that in our introduction paragraph, we're going to get 2 points, the contextualization and the thesis. Let's talk about body paragraphs. There are not a set number of body paragraphs that you would have in either your LEQ or DBQ. It's totally up to you. I usually encourage my students to have between 2 and 3, okay? So when you're talking about you're talking about your LEQs and your DBQs, you want to really make sure that you know what historical thinking skill that question is addressing. Is it addressing causation? Is it addressing comparison, or is it addressing change and continuity over time? And you want to make sure that as you argue in your body paragraphs, you're addressing whatever historical thinking skill the question is addressing. Also, just a really quick tip, if you're having trouble thinking of your topics, what topics you're going to use in your thesis or for your body paragraphs, it's always a good thing to have committed the AP US History themes to mind and sort of think through those. So an acronym that you can use is MAGPIES, and that is Migration and Settlement, America and the World, Geography and Environment, Politics and Power, National Identity, Economics and Society and Culture. And if you notice, the thesis that I chose is really addressing this thing of politics and power and society and culture. So it's a good thing to try to think through those. All right, so what kinds of things do body paragraphs have? If you're trying to get contextualization and thesis in your introduction, what are you trying to get in your body paragraphs? Well, you 100% want to start with a topic sentence. It does not give you any points, but I would argue that it's one of the most important parts of your body paragraph because it organizes your thoughts and it allows the reader to know, okay, this is the argument for this paragraph. So if this is my thesis, we've already looked at it. Let's look at a topic sentence for a body paragraph. The lost ability to compromise over the issue of slavery led directly to the Civil War, right? I am literally repeating my topic and I'm linking it back to the question. Super important to make sure that you have a topic sentence in a body paragraph. The next thing in an LEQ that you want to make sure that you have in a DBQ as well is you want to have SFI, specific factual information. You cannot write a good LEQ or a DBQ, nor can you get the points that you need without introducing very specific facts. And when you do that, you want to do it in an organized way. You want to introduce your fact, then you want to sort of define your fact, and then you want a sentence that tells your reader how your fact supports your argument or how it analyzes your argument. So if our topic sentence is the lost ability to compromise over the issue of slavery led directly to the Civil War, here's an example of how you would use SFI. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, which is my SFI, introduced in order to try and build the Transcontinental Railroad, which is my definition, would split the Nebraska Territory in two and allow for the decision of slavery to be on the basis of popular sovereignty, still part of my definition. Here's my analysis. Here's how I point it back to my argument. This act indirectly repealed the Missouri Compromise by potentially allowing slavery north of the 3630 line. With the repeal of this compromise, Northerners lost faith in the federal government, and the ability to compromise disappeared. I can't read my word there because of my picture. All right, so that's what you want to make sure that you include, that you have specific facts and that the next sentence links it back to your argument. For a DBQ, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have a topic sentence. You're going to have SFI, but you're also going to have to use documents, right? So let's look really quickly at what a document would look like. If for say example, they gave you this document here of Charles Sumner's caning, right? And we've got to use that to support our argument about the inability to compromise anymore. Here's how we're going to do that. We're going to cite the document. Numerous arguments broke out over the issue of slavery amongst political leaders during the 1850s, the most famous of those being the caning of Charles Sumner. So we have document A, like I've referenced the document that we see here. And then my analysis is the passionate arguments of political leaders over whether slavery should spread westward, further divided the North and the South, and led to civil war. Okay, so I've linked it back to my argument and made sure that it develops my argument. All right, so just a really quick recap. Body paragraphs for DBQs need topic sentences, SFI, document usage, including happy on some, and there's another video on that, and then also analysis. And in your LEQ, it's going to be the exact same, except you're not going to have document usage. And then in your conclusion paragraph, it's super simple. You definitely want to restate your thesis using different words. It's really important to do because you might not get your thesis point in your introduction paragraph because maybe you haven't said it very clearly, but by the time you've written your essay, you understand your thesis better. So always, always, always make sure that you restate your thesis. And then if you have time, you might want to develop that idea of your counter argument. Okay, thank you so much. Hope that helped you understand how to organize your essay.